Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm JR, kicking things off for your go-to Big Ten football breakdown. Today, Zach and Russ from Boiler Express Podcast tear into Purdue's 2025 football season under new management, new head coach, Barry Odom. They'll unpack the massive roster shakeup of over 70 new faces with Malachi Singleton and more, and reflect on the Boilermakers' rough 1-11 2024 season to spotlight what's next. From Devin Mockobee's return to the loss of stars like Max Klare, you'll get hard-hitting insights on whether Purdue can shock the Big Ten and shock the nation next year. This isn't just normal college football podcasting, right? Where we bring you honest, insightful, and entertaining analysis of Big Ten football. We're here to challenge the national bias, especially against the SEC, while giving every Big Ten team the attention they deserve, always with humor, passion, and a commitment to a community of fans that is fair and honest analysis. Hit that like button, subscribe, drop a 5-star rating if you're listening on podcast, and comment on YouTube or Spotify. Share your Purdue takes in the comments and join us every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 9 p.m. Zach, Russ, take it away.
Well, welcome to the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim, and joining me this Sunday night edition, Russ from the Boiler Express Podcast. Russ, how you doing tonight?
Boiler up, good sir. I am doing all right. Living the summer life. Got lots of family things, vacation stuff on the horizon, and looking forward to less than 100 days till hopefully our football season's a little better this year.
Yes. Well, I mean, I was going to say, if you win 2 games, it's 100% improvement. So, and we're going to talk about that. Obviously JR not here. I will not say that he was suspended. He has not been suspended. He's actually doing a really great thing. He's helping out with Vacation Bible School this week. And so he has turned to me, who I am now off suspension. I guess maybe the hammer's not coming, for me at least. So I'm here, and Max was asking about this in the chat. I have finished out my suspension until next week. I am back on suspension next Tuesday because my summer is crazy. But I will be here at least on Tuesday, and then hopefully for most of the rest of the summer. But excited to be here talking Purdue. Before we jump into Purdue, I'm going to throw you a curveball here first, Russ. Do you have any thoughts about some of the SEC shenanigans going on at media days, and how they are trying to prove to everyone in the media we have the toughest schedule by the metrics and everything? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a whole podcast on SEC bashing, I'm here for that too. Like, it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous when I, a staunch Purdue fan, am commenting on an IU post about their non-conference, defending the Big Ten against the SEC on an IU post, because the SEC, they hide behind this guise of like, oh, we scheduled these Power 4 opponents compared to the Big Ten. And it's like, okay, but you have 4 non-conference games to work with. So you schedule 3 cupcakes like Stetson and, Florida Tech. And then you add, let's add a bottom feeder Power 4 team in there to say we played Power 4 teams. So yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, we saw what happened in the playoffs. So of course they're going to try to find what's the excuse we're going to use now. We can't use the results of the postseason because we got our butts handed to us, and the Alabama fans are the funniest ones to me, because like you got dog walked by Oklahoma, who went 6-7. Yeah, you win that game, it's like, so I don't understand where this, and you were, even at 3 losses, you were ranked above 2-loss ACC teams, Big Ten. You were rated ahead of all these other teams, but you lost 3 games. Like, yeah, I'm just, anyways. Yeah. I can go on and on.
My favorite well-known SEC ESPN honk, if you will, Peter Burns, was saying that the Big Ten is hot garbage. And I was like, you do realize that Kentucky and Mississippi State exist, right? I mean,
who did Kentucky beat this year? Ole Miss, who complained that they should be in the playoff when Kentucky's only Power 4 win all year was against Ole Miss at Ole Miss. It's
stuff for Zach.
Yeah.
I think if Purdue and Mississippi State played, I think Purdue would win. That's my maybe mild take. I won't say it.
I'm taking it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Let's before we get into it, let's say hello to some folks in the chat. Philip in here is telling me I need to pay my fine before the suspension is fully lifted, which is 2 Illinois football jerseys or an Illinois throwback helmet. I'm not sure you understand the budget that I'm working with right now, but I do need an Illinois shirt. I do feel like for as much as I pick against Illinois, I probably need to pony up to buy an Illinois shirt, which I would get from Home Field. So make sure you check out Home Field in the link. Use our code TBTH link in the description. Make sure to do that. Billy Tuesday in the chat. Nothing better than finishing out a Sunday talking Purdue. Hello, gentlemen. Billy, hello. And I agree. Nothing better than finishing out a Sunday.
You want to feel good about your Buckeyes. Listen to somebody talk about Purdue football. That's
and then we'll get to a couple other ones later on. But we're gonna go ahead and get started here and talk Purdue. What went wrong in 2024? There's no way to sugarcoat it. You said it, 1-11, but I think, I remember we talked on my other show, Big Ten Football Talk, about Purdue before the season, and I think there was optimism. There was a sense that Ryan Walters could get things going in season 2, and it just, Notre Dame just kind of took all the air out of that. And I think hindsight, it would say, well, Ryan Walters was not the right hire, but that is not where most of us were back last August. So take us through what happened. Like, how did this all come crashing down in a sense?
I mean, rumors were aplenty. Let's just say that. So there's a lot of storylines you could try to go with and excuses or reasoning you can go with. But I think it just came down to that the coaches just kind of did not have a good game plan and lost the locker room very quickly. And so it went south very, very quickly. I don't want to sound like an old fogey and go, they should have spent less time on Instagram and Twitter and more time learning how to tackle. But when you have the quote unquote swagger, positive attitude, you're showing the dancing, you're showing this, whatever, going through the season. And then we have as many badly missed open field tackles against Notre Dame, and it just didn't get better from then the rest of the season. And we can't move the ball. It was like we didn't know how to play football. It literally was like you stuck a high school team in with the exception of a couple of games, and maybe we'll talk about those later, but like it just did not look like we even belonged on a football field. So you hear about like I said, the moves in the locker room, you hear about maybe practices weren't, formed the right way. We didn't focus on the right fundamentals. A big talking point is that, especially Graham Harrell and Walters together between the offensive air raid and the defensive scheme that Walters runs, it was more we're trying to fit guys to a scheme versus fit the scheme to the guys that we have in the locker room. And they didn't want to abort that. And it, like I said, it just didn't get better, obviously, from Notre Dame on.
Yeah, I think, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this too. The thing that shocked me was it felt like Dylan Thieneman, who everybody's saying, he's freshman All-American, really good player. And he looked lost most of the time.
He missed some open tackles against Notre Dame that were big time. I think there was one of the 90-yard runs that, Thieneman had basically for like a no gain, gave up the run, and it was a touchdown. It's like Thieneman's an All-American. What's going on? So, yeah.
Yeah. And again, like, we know he's good because Oregon came after him, right? And Max Klare, another guy, and he was big time for Purdue.
Will help.
But
yeah.
Yeah. But he's going to Ohio State. And so it's not like Purdue was so devoid of talent, but it sounds like what you're saying is that there was, from top down, a lot of communication errors at minimum, a lot of guys not knowing what they were doing, and maybe even just some disinterest just in terms of playing on the field. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, I think when you have a situation that goes south so quickly like it did with Notre Dame, and then we couldn't rebound against Oregon State, it became very quickly in today's college football world, okay, well, I got to defend myself, right? Like I've got to try to, it's more about me than the team now because I want to go play for Oregon, Ohio State, Clemson, wherever. And then it just becomes a slippery slope, and you're not bought in anymore. And we're firing our offensive coordinator, and it's just, all the wheels are falling off at that point.
Yeah. But we'll talk about Barry Odom in a few minutes and kind of the change. But one question I do have, because it looked bad, right? You go through the schedule.
That's an understatement. It's an
60,
understatement.
yeah.
You lose to your two in-state rivals a combined 132-7.
Yeah, it's not good,
Bob.
But October 12th, they play at Illinois, which Illinois, big season, right? And, Philip is going to tell me about how good Illinois was and is going to be this year. But they take Illinois to the wire, go to overtime, lose by a point. Like, was there a sense of hope after that game? Or was it like, it was like their last effort? Like, what were you guys thinking at that point?
You led into one of my points I foreshadowed earlier, which was, and you're bearing the lead a little bit on that game. Our starting quarterback was out for that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hudson Card was injured. And so who happened to be the quarterback? A man by the name of Ryan Brown, who, briefly left Purdue,
Mm-hmm.
dabbled in the Bill Belichick North Carolina experiment and said, hey, wait a second. Purdue needs a quarterback still. I'm gonna head back to West Lafayette. And so
was it just that Purdue needs a quarterback, or is it like this whole thing about a coach dating a 20-year-old is weird?
I think it's both. It's definitely both. It was like, you know what? Maybe I should have just stayed where I was at. Like, I thought this was good, but I think it was an impulse. And I think there were some guys that, didn't have the opportunity to come back to Purdue that maybe wish they didn't just jump the gun. But in today's era, when you lose a coach and you lose the whole staff, the automatic knee-jerk reaction is, my name's in the portal. Let's go somewhere. And then I think he realized, wait a second, like, it's all about opportunity, especially at quarterback position, like in any position in college football, but especially at quarterback, it's because there's only one guy that gets the first, that starts the game. You can work in running backs, receivers, any other position group. So quarterback, it's very much about opportunity. And he saw, hey, I got this crazy situation here in Chapel Hill, and I've got a winnable quarterback room where I'm already familiar with some of the guys on the roster. I think I want to go back there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We've got the Ryan Brown has stirred the chat quite a bit. Philip, Ryan Brown took and missed his shot at Jordan Hudson. Maybe that's why he returned. We're just going to move on.
If you know anything about that situation, I don't think anybody's even taking a shot because
there's some real soap opera drama.
Little voodoo magic, something, and mind control.
And that's all we're going to say. I don't want to. Yeah. It's just when there's smoke, there's fire. That's all I'm going to say. Mish, he's had a lot of things in the comment that I'll probably bring up later, but said Brown should have been the quarterback for the whole year. A mobile quarterback would fare much better behind that OL. What say you, Russ?
Yeah, to get back to kind of where you started the whole Illinois talk was when we got to that game, we pushed Illinois to the brink. There was a part of the fan base that thought, okay, so is Ryan Brown the guy now? Like, are we going to stick with him? Is this how we maybe salvage the season? Maybe we don't go to a bowl game, but maybe we win we beat Northwestern. We somehow bring Indiana back to reality before we knew how the rest of last season was going to go. And we go, okay, maybe there's a chance here, but they immediately just gave the reins back to Hudson Card. And I think a lot of Purdue fans were going, did we not see how the season started? Like, I know he's the guy that we brought in from Texas and he, beat Alabama but like at some point you got to go, okay, it's not working. And I think that was a big, another step, maybe not obviously not the first step, but another big step in losing the locker room. Yeah. Was, giving the reins back to somebody that it wasn't working with, and it went back to not working, kind of.
Yeah. And it's hard because I remember when Hudson Card transferred to Purdue, a lot of people thought he might be a top 5 quarterback in the league. And I wonder if, well, not wonder, I think what we're really seeing was we saw Hudson Card behind a good offensive line at Texas with good weapons, and they were playing teams with lesser talent most of the time in the Big 12. And now he comes to the Big Ten, worse offensive line, worse weapons. Now you don't have Jeff Brom as your coordinator. It's and your head coach. It's Ryan Walters and whoever he has as his offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just But I think that makes it hard then when you're like, well, let's go to Ryan Brown. But we've got this guy that's so good, like supposedly so good. But I think it was one of those things where the ranking was taking precedence over the on-field performance. And it sounds like maybe Ryan Brown is the guy moving forward. He should have been the guy. Yeah. And any other
Hudson Card
thoughts?
well, let's be fair too. Hudson Card did have a good first season at Purdue, and I know they went 4-8, so the record wasn't great, but he was top 5 in most statistical categories as far as quarterbacks go in the Big Ten, as far as yards, passing touchdowns. We just didn't have much defensive support. And then there was talk about we're going to bolster offensive line going into last year, and obviously kind of took a different direction.
Yeah. One other thing to note, like things fell apart. The schedule was also brutal. And we said that going in, right? It was brutal. Notre Dame in the national championship game, right? Nebraska was a bowl team. At Wisconsin wasn't good. They didn't make a bowl, but it was still at Camp Randall. Illinois, 10-win team. Oregon, playoff team. Ohio State, national champion. Penn State, semifinalist. Indiana, playoff team. Like, that's a brutal, brutal schedule. And so that's not to excuse anything, but it's like you have everything falling apart and you throw in that. It's not like Florida State. Like Florida State collapsed and they played nobody.
Yeah, I think at one point I saw a stat on Fox that said Purdue was the first team in the AP poll history to face 3 of the top 4 teams in the same season, with Penn State, Ohio State, and when Indiana was up there.
Oh my!
Oregon, I'm sorry, not Indiana. You had Indiana and Notre Dame on top of that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Correct. So brutal schedule. It's not going to get easier next year either, but that's kind of the new world of the Big Ten. There is, I think a little bit of hope, right, with the coaching change, and we'll talk about that now. Going from Ryan Walters, who's fired, to Barry Odom, UNLV head coach. He was a hot name coming into the kind of the coaching carousel. Why do you think Barry Odom is going to be different than Ryan Walters?
I think a big difference, and this is kind of maybe part of the pieces of why Ryan Walters didn't work out, is it was his first head coaching gig, and at a Power 4 school that just went to the Big Ten championship game, but also lost a ton of players from that team. And it was, I think he talked about it a lot in his radio shows and his interviews that he was having it. I don't think he used the word struggling himself, but from outsider, you just go, okay, you obviously were struggling because of the result, but he was learning how to manage the team because, when you're a coordinator, it's more just, this is my system. I'm installing it. I'm coaching the players. When you're a head coach, you're doing recruiting, you're dealing with NIL. You have to get the right people in place to help you run the systems you want to run, but make sure they run it the right way. So he was, learning to manage his time, and it was his first shot at doing that. Whereas Barry Odom is somebody that has done it in the SEC. He did it. UNLV has never won, I think it was 10 plus games in back-to-back seasons in their history, and that's what he did the last 2 years there. Yep. So he's, definitely got the experience as a head coach and at Power 4 school. I know he's coming from the Mountain West, but he's got the experience that I think Purdue needs to kind of steady the ship and get back in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. So a few thoughts in the chat, and then we'll hit a commercial break in a minute. Max is asking, can Odom pull a Cignetti? He did not pull most of his good players along with him, but he had an interesting recruitment year. Losing Max Klare to OSU was a tough loss, though. Yeah. What do you think about that idea? Obviously Cignetti's kind of the poster child, but do you think there can be any similarities there?
Yeah, I mean, I said that to you before we came on, right? Was that, everybody's talking about all these unknowns and Purdue's just going to be terrible because we were terrible the last couple of years. And well, that's kind of been the history with Indiana football. And Cignetti comes in with a lot of unknowns from a group of 5 conference and brings in a lot of transfers and does really well. So yeah, it's obviously now you see that and you see that plan, but our schedule doesn't look the same as Indiana. The names and the caliber of players, like you said, aren't exactly on the level that what Indiana brought, with Cignetti coming in last year, but it's definitely provided enough variables to give some Purdue fans hope that it could be at least better than what last year was. Maybe not a bowl season, maybe not something great like what Indiana did, but there's definitely optimism because of that, because you see that template is there in today's college sports and today's college football, that you can bring in a new coach. And with all the transfers, because Purdue's a team that on a lot of people's radar did really well in the like the late portal, the post-spring game, post-spring exhibition portal. We brought in a lot of new guys that put us on people's radar of like, okay, let's maybe start to pay attention a little bit of what's going on in West Lafayette.
Yeah. No, and we'll talk more about kind of the roster turnover in a minute. Why don't we go ahead and take a break here, and then we'll come back and we'll bring up some of your comments, and then we'll get more into kind of that roster management that you're talking about, Russ. So we will take about a 30-second break, and then we will be back.
Home Field is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Home Field brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Home Field digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description.
Back on the Big Ten Huddle. Make sure you get all your swag, including Purdue swag, at Home Field. TBTH. That's the code you should use
Pacers.
to get.
I know we're it's a football pod, but they're doing some good Pacers stuff over there.
Yeah, my wife is pumped, by the way, for the Pacers. She's a Pacers fan through and through, and so she's very excited about them being in the NBA Finals. Before we get to this next topic, let me just bring up some comments here. Mish, he said, Purdue is beyond cooked. They got no NIL support and have to rebuild a roster from scratch. Russ, what say you about the NIL of the Boilermakers?
So I don't know even where to start there completely, but that was a lot of the talk. And I just talked basketball. I'm going to talk basketball again. That was a lot of talk about our basketball team this year. We lost in the Sweet 16, and we've got a guy that was the Big Ten Player of the Year in basketball, a guy that was first team All Big Ten, a guy in Fletcher Loyer is one of the best 3-point shooters. It was all just talk about who are we going to lose. Like Purdue didn't have any money. They're going to lose these guys. Kentucky's after him. Kansas after him. Lo and behold, not only do they stay at Purdue, Purdue goes and signs some decent transfers, brings in another international player, and somehow we had the money to do that. So, am I delirious and think we have the money to compete with Ohio State, Oregon, even like a USC, or especially like Alabama? No, we don't have. But like, you start adding those teams up and you go, okay, once we get to like 20, 25, 30, who are we going to throw in there? I think Purdue's doing a lot better behind the scenes than what people think, because it's evident in the basketball side of things. And if basketball's got money, Purdue's got money, because the school is still going to put more money into football than basketball, because the roster's larger. It's a bigger revenue stream for the schools. So it's that I don't buy that. Yeah, we don't have top 10 money, but Purdue's got money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's how, like, Purdue's got money because they're in the Big Ten, right? Like, yeah. That is the advantage of being in the Big Ten conference, is you have revenue sharing. And also Purdue, people forget, they get tunnel vision with Big Ten schools, and they're like, well, Purdue is just football and basketball. It's like, no, the alumni base is huge. And it's successful, right? One of the biggest engineering schools in the country. So I know no one wants to get on a podcast to talk about engineering, but a football podcast for engineering. But
if Purdue fans are tuned in, they might be okay with it.
That's fair. But the reality is, though, like,
NASA, the Good Chef too. Yeah, we got our banners are on the moon, y'all.
So you're getting NIL money from outer space. That's what I'm hearing you say. The point being, no Big Ten school, maybe outside of Northwestern, is really going to struggle with NIL. And even Northwestern, I don't think is going to actually struggle. They'll struggle for other reasons, but Big Ten schools are not going to struggle in this era because of the way they share TV revenue. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, like 18th in the Big Ten, you're still at top 40 probably nationally.
Yeah.
You take the top ACC teams, the top maybe Big 12 programs, a lot of the SEC programs, but like after that, the Mountain West, the Group of 5 schools not got more money than Purdue. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and it speaks to culture, and it speaks to coaching, and it speaks to roster management, which we're going to get to in a minute. We're going to get to a few more comments here, and then we'll kind of get to the next topic here. But this is from earlier in the show. Philip said, "I need a jacket. Purdue defending Indiana means hell. Must have frozen over." That was from earlier in the show. Do you want to take it back, Russ? Do you want to delete the tweet or delete the comment on the Indiana tweet?
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was against the SEC.
I have no idea. I don't.
Okay, we're just going to move on then. Never mind. This is from earlier. The Big Ten beating up the SEC in the postseason showed everyone that the talk of depth is a lie. Preach, Argraw. Preach. 5-1, I think, was what happened. So, yeah. SEC is not better than the Big Ten. Well, it's close, and I would say that the Big Ten has certainly had 2 better seasons than the SEC. So that's my lukewarm take. Max had a really good thought. Wonder if the narrative would be different if Purdue won the Illinois game. Do you think Ryan Walters would have kept his job if they beat Illinois?
I think so, because I think it would have changed the way the rest of the season went. I don't know. Maybe we pull off Northwestern as well then. Maybe actually, and if we end up with at least, because I think that was I think that Babinski and Purdue, historically especially, they don't like to fire guys, especially after just 2 seasons. It's not the way they want to go. And the things that were being said by AD Mike Babinski, even leading up to the last few games of the season, was basically it was showing that there was a path for Walters to still keep his job, even going into the final 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And so, yeah, I think that even if we win 1, maybe 2 more games, it does keep his job. And then I still would be worried about what this season looks like. Who does he actually keep in the building? Who still transfers? Does Thieneman still leave? Does Klare still leave? Who knows what all that changes? But I definitely think he would have kept his job if we beat Illinois.
Yeah. That's a good thought. Well, so going back real quick, Argraw made this comment, and I think it's just helpful. Purdue makes more money a year on media revenue than Notre Dame. NIL, not an issue. Not an issue.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good comment, Argraw. But yeah, so back to your comment before. They beat Illinois, Ryan Walter, and they probably have momentum, and they're able to keep Ryan Walters. But I think we're probably both in agreement that it's probably better for them to move on from Ryan Walters anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Which Philip, our resident Illinois fan, Bert knew Ryan Walters wasn't ready for that job back when he took it.
Well,
maybe
Bert almost went 0-2 against Walters as he was at Purdue. So Bert would be the one that'd be talking trash, but
it would have been something if they beat South Carolina and lost to Purdue. I kind of actually wish that happened just for the sake of
then we'd beat
SEC
Kentucky.
honks.
We'd beat Kentucky beating Ole Miss, and then
SEC. No, everything turns back into an SEC ripping. Pit Snipe Husker, evening fellers, evening Pit Snipe. Appreciate you being here. The Good Chef. I want to know what you're cooking, Good Chef. I am more invested in Purdue football this season than I ever have. LOL.
So peek behind the curtain. The Good Chef is a buddy of mine from the K-State podcast in the College Huddle.
Oh, nice.
He's in our dynasty. So he because there's multiple Purdue guys from our podcast in that dynasty. He's learned more about Purdue than ever before.
Nice. Well, Chef, we appreciate you being here, and if you want to make us something good, we'd appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about what we learned this spring. The spring game was a little extra, but you had mentioned that it wasn't just the spring game, but that there was a lot of activity in the portal in the spring window. A lot of people are going to want to talk about the quarterbacks, and we'll get to them, but just bring us through what all did you learn as a fan and as someone who follows Purdue this spring?
Not a lot. Not a lot. So it wasn't even so ours was, of course, one of those spring exhibition things where they didn't do an actual spring game. They set up different scenarios, different drills, and then posted a highlight video. And I think half the guys from that highlight video transferred out of Purdue. So it's like, you sit there, and I did a pod with Dylan shortly after that. And at the time, I think we were in the 30s as far as incoming transfers. It was like 32, 34. And I was like, guys, stop panicking. We didn't lose everybody. We actually have about the same amount of transfers that we had year 2 with Walters coming in, and we were hyped about that. And the guys are returning, the guys we're adding. So just because you maybe not know the names as well this time, don't panic. And then like 2 weeks went by, and now we're at like 50 something transfers, and a lot of those guys transferred out. So I think the biggest thing we learned, and at least as Purdue fans we hoped, is that Ryan Brown has returned, and the QB room, while it didn't look great and give us a lot of confidence, I think if he is the guy, Purdue fans are going to be very, very hyped and invested again going into the season.
Yeah, and I think it means something that a guy who transferred out came back in, right? Like it carries, you were talking about it before. What does it say with all these guys transferring out that Ryan Brown would actually plant a flag and say, I'm actually coming back? Like, what do you think that means for the morale of the program?
A lot, because these guys, like I said, there were more guys that returned than we realized. Denylon Morissette, who was a transfer in last year from Georgia, receiver, who had some of the few touchdowns that we had the first few weeks of the season. George Burren, a sophomore tight end now, who had a kind of a breakout game 2 years ago when we actually beat Indiana as a true freshman, or actually ended up being his redshirt year because he only played less than 4 games that year. Devin Mockobee's coming back. Receiver Armand Branch. There's enough guys in the room that Ryan Brown, as a depth quarterback, would have got a lot of reps with that are now kind of get promoted. So he gets to come back and not only kind of be maybe the favorite for the job, he's walking back in with familiar faces more so than people realize with the amount of turnover we've had.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, like, he's got rapport with a lot of these guys. Morale's big. Are there any other quarterbacks on the roster that you think will push Ryan Brown for the starting position?
Yeah, so the easy one's Malachi Singleton, right? That's the name that we thought was going to be the guy. He came in from Arkansas, kind of had a relationship with some of the staff in his past. I think his dad played for a former coach that's on the staff, and he was at Arkansas. He was the quarterback that basically got the game-winning touchdown against Tennessee when they beat Tennessee this year. But I think especially the more knowledgeable and that know the names and the storylines behind these guys, Purdue fans, are going to feel Hudson Card vibes. And because of the way that went with Hudson Card being, he's at Texas, he was the depth quarterback, but he came in and they beat Alabama. Malachi Singleton's kind of the same storyline. I think with what we've actually seen from Ryan Brown on the field, Purdue fans would lean towards, we kind of hope Ryan Brown's the guy. Now, what we're going to see is probably what we see now in college football is we got Ball State and Southern Illinois the first 2 games. We're going to see them split quarters, split reps, split in game, and we won't know until week 3 at USC probably who the guy really is.
Yeah, that makes sense. So quarterback position feels like it's leaning Brown, but Singleton is going to push. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Mish in the chat had mentioned didn't Purdue bring in a big portal receiver too? Who are some of the guys that they're bringing in, or the guys that have remained that are other guys we need to be looking out for? I know they got Nitro Tuggle right out of Georgia, which,
yep.
By the way, that's like all name, like for a wide receiver. Nitro. Right. I want a Nitro.
There's a pipeline now. There's a transfer pipeline from Georgia to Purdue because I think we got 4 last year. Now we got 2 more at least this year that I've seen. So yeah, we're definitely. I mean, we're robbing the SEC coffers on transfers. But I'm more looking at the returning guys. I think that, I said Armand Branch and Donald Morissette were guys that have some rapport. Devin Mockobee, of course, as a running back, he has the ability to, with a decent season, be like second all time in Purdue in rushing yards. So there's still some familiar names for Purdue fans, but just, buy a program or, make sure you look at the roster page online, because there's gonna be a lot of guys you've never heard of that will step up and make plays that I couldn't predict who's going to win those battles right now, because some of the guys that we were hyped about in the transfer market last year, like a Nyland Green, came in halfway through the season and was not so great. CJ Smith, who we never even really got to see in a Purdue uniform. So, we could talk about guys that are hyped coming in as transfers, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to more actual competition-based depth charts with this new coaching staff than it was last time with guys that maybe got promised something like a Hudson Card getting his job back, regardless of how things were going. I think it's going to be a wide open, you earn it, you got it.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, and just saying that I'm looking at our lads, which they do the depth chart, projected depth chart. On defense, they are projecting, let's see, 9 starters that are transfers. So 9 new starters on defense and 8 new starters on offense. And that is not including Ryan Brown. And that transfers.
I'm going to try to pull it up real quick too, so if I can maybe give you some live answers. But last time I looked at our lads for a depth chart, half the guys on there were not even on our roster.
Yeah.
So they don't always have the most updated roster as far as positions go there. Like you said, with Ryan Brown as big as example, but
yeah. Yeah. So that to your point, the roster or the depth chart from week 1 to week 6 might look radically different.
Oh yeah.
So it should be a really fun season.
Yeah, it's. I think the initial hope for Purdue fans will be that, we kind of learned something from the first 2 weeks with Ball State and Southern Illinois, but also that they don't mean a whole lot because hopefully they will go more like Indiana State did last year. But that'll be your chance to learn some of these names because you'll see a lot of guys, but it'll come down to USC to know who's really going to be the guys that we lean on and rely on and who really have those position battles won.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. We're gonna get to our last segment in a minute, but let me get us one more commercial break, and then we will come back. So,
the Big Ten Huddle is brought to you by the College Huddle, the largest fan-led college sports podcast community on the internet. With contributors from 70 different schools, you will get in all kinds of analysis from all over the country. Go visit thecollegehuddle.com to find your team and read articles from all across so many fans and contributors. The College Huddle is fan-made, fan-driven, and fan-fueled.
Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, I am Zach Guggenheim, joined by my friend Russ from Boiler Express podcast, who is part of the College Huddle. So make sure you check out the College Huddle. Make sure you check out Boiler Express. Russ will give you all the deets on that at the end of the episode. Also make sure subscribe. If you want to become a member, become a member. We'd love to have you. We try to do once a month member call-in shows. We got merch. Check out the merch store. Definitely just hang out with us. So, subscribe. Thanks for being here, everybody. Russ, we're going to get to our last topic here, and it's the big one, I think. What do we expect for next year?
At least 2 wins.
At least 2 wins. 2 wins.
I think that's what it comes down to.
Max Ellis may not want that because chirp, chirp, go birds. I own a small business in Muncie. So Max might be hoping for an upset win. Oh boy, here comes trouble.
Here he comes.
Late
as usual.
Dylan has arrived to the show. We love you, buddy. We love you. I don't know why is he booing you?
Which there's just like a kind of a it's a bit, it's a shtick that there's a rivalry between the two of us because he's the young kid and I'm the old guy in the podcast, even though we're really like probably 8 years apart.
Dylan, whenever Dylan and I are on a show together, I feel like I'm gonna just die of laughter.
Oh yeah.
He's the
morale guy at Boiler Express. He's definitely the morale guy.
Yes. He is what Ryan Walters needed for last year. He needed a morale boost.
Yeah, I think that he, myself, maybe Chris included, were some of the last guys off the Walters bandwagon too because of that. We were trying.
Yeah, and for good reason. Billy Tuesday asked one of our members, by the way. He asked, "What's a good 2025 for Purdue?" You said 2 wins, but in all honesty, would you say it's 2 wins, or what is really success for 2025 for Purdue?
Not losing 66-0 or 66-7. I think that's what it comes. I think Purdue fans, with what's going on with the basketball side of things, there is a fan base out there that wants to support Purdue and wants to go to games and have a good time, watch a good product that is actually competitive. We don't expect to win 10, 11, 12 games. We don't expect to go to the playoff. Maybe, we get this thing rebuilt and we get a good schedule that falls our way, then maybe we could sneak in as like the 4th Big Ten team. But this year, it's just about, yes, we definitely need to take care of business against Ball State and Southern Illinois. After that, if we can pull out a win, 2, 3, if we somehow get a bowl game, that's fantastic. But what Purdue fans want to see is just a competitive product that shows we have a team and a staff that knows what they're doing and cares about winning and cares about representing Purdue in a positive way. I think that's what it comes down to. A successful year is us at least being in games.
Yeah. I want to get to the schedule in a minute, but what about, this might be a dumb question, but what would being in games, but maybe still going like 2-10, but say you don't lose a game by more than 2 touchdowns? What does that say for the future of Purdue under Barry Odom in your mind? So
that's kind of an incomplete question to me, because to me it will be, what does the offseason look like after that? If we have that kind of a season and our roster gets gutted again, then questions are going to be like, okay, so maybe players didn't buy into what the staff was doing. Maybe we aren't headed the right direction. But we do that and we have a great offseason. We finish middle of the road or even higher as far as recruiting rankings, transfer portal rankings go, then we have a different conversation. So I think it's got to be kind of a whole picture thing where they're not just the record. Like what is the behind the scenes? What is the writing on the wall show with the roster turnover, with who's coming in, who's buying in to come back and keep this going, or who's going 2-10 didn't work, I'm out, and now we're back to square one.
Yeah. If I can maybe try to hit the heart of what you're saying is Barry Odom actually going to be a program builder is really the big question. Like, is he going to build this program? And you can't build it if you're getting gutted after the first sign of progress. I was just really quick looking at Jeff Brom and his tenure at Purdue. And, obviously he left for Louisville, which I know, we talked about Louisville off show. We have maybe differing opinions on the city of Louisville, but Jeff Brom came in, 7-6, 6-7, but then 4-8, 2-4. Obviously 2-4 was 2020. I don't remember 2019 and 2020 because I remember them going to the Big Ten title game.
Mm-hmm.
I remember them beating Tennessee in a bowl game, I think it was the Music City Bowl in 2021. They had 2 great years in 21 and 22. Why? Because he kept building even after the down years. And so people forget 2022, that was 2 seasons ago. And I know Jeff Brom left, but it's not like they were this awful team. And granted, they played in the West, so they had a better draw, but they still played Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. They still played Penn State in the opener and took Penn State to the wire. By the way,
that Big Ten championship game was like a single possession game, I think into the third quarter. At least it was 10 points or less into the late in the third quarter. So it was not, it wasn't a blowout either. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It was 14-13 at half. And 28-16 after the third quarter.
Yeah.
So it's not it wasn't they were respectable in that game. And then Jeff Brom left.
Yep.
But it's important to keep that in context for everybody who's saying, well, Purdue has no shot. Purdue is they're the bottom feeder program. They're 2 seasons removed from 17 wins in 2 years, including a win over the vaunted SEC. They're not that they especially in this era, what you need is someone who's willing to start building back up to that trajectory. So I don't think either of us, it doesn't sound like you're thinking, well, they have to get bowl eligible this year. It's do they have enough in Barry Odom with Barry Odom to build towards the future? And that includes this season and the off season.
Exactly. And I think Jeff Brom, and there's fans that are split on it and maybe have different opinions, but I think at the end of the day, most Purdue fans understand that he was going to leave for Louisville at some point. It's his alma mater. But if we're honest with ourselves, he was kind of the prototypical, perfect Purdue coach because he sold the product well. He kept the roster turning. He kept things, like you said, towards building a program. He just sold the product really well. He sold Purdue for what it was, which is somebody that's still in the Big Ten, that still has the NIL money, which because people react like NIL it's new this year, or it's like just the last year or two. NIL was around when Braun was at Purdue, and we did an okay job. Not an okay job, a great job. We had draft picks. We had guys that went to the NFL. Karlaftis won a Super Bowl in his first 2 years in the NFL, his first round pick with the Chiefs. But he sold the product well. Purdue's a great spot that if we're competitive and we're in those big games against Ohio State and pull off a game, an upset like that, you put your name on the wall just as well at Purdue as you will anywhere else in the Big Ten or the SEC, and give yourself a shot at the NFL.
Yeah, it's good. I want to get to a few comments here because I think hitting on something that you're talking about too is which is more important for Purdue right now, recruiting high schoolers or transfer portal additions? As you think about Barry Odom's program and how he's got to be a program builder.
Both. I think you need both churning. I think it's at the end of the day, you can talk about examples where somebody went all transfer and it worked, or somebody held on to high schoolers and it worked. At the end of the day, you've got to have both because you can't just completely gut the program and bring in all transfers every year. And you've got to have enough of a culture there to have guys that want to stick around and wait their turn because, like Purdue, again, I'm going to keep going to basketball, but that's why Painter's been a perfect coach for Purdue is because and now this year he's dipped more in the transfer portal, but he's been a perfect guy at getting guys bought in, keeping them bought in, and also being able to bring in an extra piece or two here or there to support that. And I think that's kind of what you have to have in today's day and age. You've got to have a little bit of a both, a little bit of a hybrid system for sure. And, that's another thing I'm going to say too, like with NIL and people going, hey, Purdue doesn't have the money to compete. Well, before NIL existed, Purdue wasn't getting the 5 stars and the 4 stars, but we still got a Drew Brees. We still went to Rose Bowl. We're still going to bowl games. So I don't know this idea of Purdue's somehow going to get worse because NIL and we're not going to have money. Purdue wasn't at the top of the Big Ten before NIL. So I don't know what we're expecting. We expect a big turnaround. Purdue's actually probably in a better position because of NIL, because of the TV revenue and because of revenue sharing now. Purdue's probably in a better position now with NIL than they were before NIL. Yeah.
Before all that NIL, they did beat Ohio State 49-20 or something, right? Back in 2018.
Yeah.
So not that I remember that, not at all.
And that's not the only time Purdue's beat them in the last 20 years. Just ask Stoneburner.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. The 2009 game, I think in particular, is the one that frustrates me the most. But 2018, I called. I said at the beginning of the year they're gonna get murdered by Purdue.
I worked with a buddy, the Ohio State fan, and he goes, "So what's going on? You all going to beat us, or is it going to be a game?" I said, "Well, I know for one thing for sure, you're going to know the name Rondale Moore before that game's over. You're going to know." And
we did. We did. I don't think the defenders knew who he was because they didn't know how to tackle him. So, let's look at the schedule real quick for Purdue, and maybe you could give me a quick projection. Just what do you think the best case is? For those listening or watching, here's the schedule: Ball State, Southern Illinois, USC, all at home, at Notre Dame, and then a bye week. Illinois, at Minnesota, at Northwestern, Rutgers at home, and then at Michigan, Ohio State at home, at Washington, and a bye before they face Indiana on a Friday night on NBC for the Old Oaken Bucket. Best case, what's the best case scenario and what's the worst case scenario in your mind?
I mean, best case scenario is we pull in Indiana and we go to the playoff.
Okay. Reasonable.
No.
Reasonable.
A realistic best case is we do find a way to get to 6-6 and get a bowl game. Because you look at games at home against USC. I can see that being a game we struggle being competitive in. But at the same time, USC has not been the power that that they once were.
Yep.
And they're going to be traveling all the way across the country and coming into Ross-Ade. And if we start the season 2-0 and we look really good, I can see Purdue fans kind of showing up for that game going, okay, let's see what we got with Barry Odom. At Notre Dame, don't give us much of a chance there. So you're probably looking at best case scenarios 3-1, but hopefully at least 2-2 going in the bye week. And then, Illinois has been, I know we obviously had the history with Ron Walters coming from there the last 2 years for us to be competitive with them the last 2 years, but there's still a school that it's a trophy game. It's a rivalry, play for the Purdue Cannon. It's still a game that when it's at Ross-Ade, I'd give us a chance in just about any year, unless we go and lose at Notre Dame 66-7 again. So that's a game that, who knows what happens at Minnesota, an old Purdue or an old Big Ten West battle. Now Minnesota's obviously on a much different trajectory. They got a guy in PJ Fleck that's kind of like their Jeff Brom that, their fans are kind of going, this is probably a perfect fit for us. Like, we're not going to be a top 5 power nationally, but he gets us to bowl games. So that's going to be tough because it's at their place at Northwestern at their little high school stadium. Again, Northwestern's the team that we almost beat last year, even in a 1-11 year. So that's a game that I could give us a puncher's chance in. Rutgers at home, homecoming game. It's another game that, might be a 30% chance, but that's you're saying there's a chance. And then, of course, Michigan, Ohio State, it's going to be a tough 2-week stretch to pull off. At Washington, going all the way out to the West Coast, it's going to be tough to pull off. And then Indiana, traditionally, being a rivalry game, records don't matter. And I think some of these guys that were on the roster last year, they're going to want to get some payback for the 66-0 defeat. And then guys that are coming in are going, hey, this ain't this Purdue team you beat 66-0 last year. Like, we're going to prove something. So I could see, depending on how Indiana seasons go, we could go right back to kind of reality with that. So there's enough like 30% chance games in there that if we can pull off somehow, get some good Vegas luck, I can see us pulling off a 6-6 year. But I think a likely first year of Walters where we went 4-8 is probably more of a realistic or good season for Purdue this year.
Yeah, I do. It's funny. I was looking at the Indiana Purdue game. Both of them have a 13-day bye or a 13-day layoff between their second to last game and the Old Oaken Bucket. So that's I think Indiana is the more talented team, but I am curious, rivalry, time off, how does that affect both coaches, both teams? I can see, and again, I think it's a small chance, but I agree with you that I think there is a bowl game on the table. I don't think it's just, I think that is the ultimate pinnacle for them this year.
Well, because since we're talking about IU, right, we're finishing with IU there. Part of the perfect storm with IU's season this last year was, at this point last year, people didn't think IU's schedule was easy. Right? You had Michigan, you had Washington teams that were in the playoff. Yeah. And then their seasons kind of, went downhill in a way that Indiana said, oh, we've got a shot to pull this off. And the Michigan game wasn't impressive, but they pulled off the win. So it's you never know what could happen and what could go your way in a college football season. Never say never.
Yeah. There's a running joke, Russ, that apparently I am a Kent State fanboy because I covered Kent State
Golden Flashes
last year. And so Philip, just you gotta keep bringing up Kent State, man. It's too late for Purdue to schedule Zach's favorite team. Listen, Purdue, I think, would beat Kent State. Kent State was really bad last year, horrifically bad.
We'll do it for Daryl Hazel.
That's payback. That's going deep. That's going deep in the archives. But yeah, so I think Indiana, I think it's hard because I know Indiana fans are not going to like me saying this, but I think to your point, Indiana, very good, but there's still questions about talent, at least in my mind. You're right in that I think people expected them to play a tough schedule, and they didn't. They objectively did not play a tough schedule. This is objectively, at least right now, murderer's row. But USC really could be really good and be a top 25 team. I also feel like we've kind of been saying that about USC for the past couple of years. So which USC team are you going to get? I think Illinois, I really think Illinois is a top 10, top 15 team this year. But again, at Ross-Ade, if it's Ross-Ade at night, I mean, Ross-Ade at night is bad. Same thing with Indiana. Indiana going to Ross-Ade at night. I don't care that it's rivalry. And yes, I am hating on Indiana. I fully embrace it now. I am Max, just going full heel. In Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, like all those teams are teams that can be had. So I think the question is, can they actually circle the wagons? Can Brown be the guy at quarterback? Is the coaching from top to bottom aligned? I hesitate to ask this question, but worst case scenario, is it 1-11? Is it 0-12? Is it getting crushed 7? What do you think the floor is for this team?
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario is probably, like you said, 1-11. It's as much as Ball State and Indiana State is a different caliber, right? Indiana State's an FCS school. Ball State's actually in the MAC, little MACtion. And it is the first game of the season in a new regime with a ton of new faces, where the coaching staff's probably going to be trying a lot of different things. And if all those different things don't work the right way that first game, I could see us dropping that game. Kind of likewise with Southern Illinois the next week. I could see one of those two, because it's a new regime, a lot of new faces, a lot of new players. One of them could come up to bite us, and then the rest of the season could just fall the way that last year did, and it kind of go downhill. And then again, it's still at that point, is Barry Odom the kind of coach, and does he have the kind of staff that can still keep things together and get a roster built in the right direction, or do people go, wow, Purdue just really is never going to have another football team, and they all, jump ship?
Yeah. It's almost more important. Like, the worst case scenario is really dependent on how they rebound from a loss. I think that's a really good thought, which I think it goes back to, is Barry Odom going to build this program back? That's really the key thing. So, a couple more comments that I want to get to, and then we'll get you out of here, Russ. Max said Russ has a solid take, and I appreciate it coming from a Purdue fan. I think he was talking about an earlier comment that he made, but I think that is true of you, Russ. You are the Purdue man with the plan, and right. I think you have been more than excellent in your Purdue take. And then a couple other things. We talked about Illinois and Luke Altmaier early in the show, and I missed these comments, but I think we got to give some props to Luke Altmaier. Luke is the second best quarterback in the conference. He demands respect. I don't know if he'll finish in the top 2. I think Julian Sayin and Dante Moore might have something to say about that. Bryce Underwood might have something to say about that. But right now,
and of course, an Indiana hater wouldn't mention Mendoza. So
yes. Oh gosh, how could I forget about Mendoza? Right, I'm a hater. No, I think Mendoza is up there too. I think those, but I think right now, in terms of established guys, absolutely. And I think, Philip, I'll give Philip some love here. Hot take, Luke Altmaier, 2025 Heisman finalist. Look, if he can win some big games, I've picked Illinois to beat Ohio State. That's my hot take.
The Eli Buck hashtag.
Yeah. Well, it's at Illinois, but if Altmaier has an all-time game against the Buckeyes, he'll be in New York, especially if they're a playoff team. So, Billy Tuesday, we love Billy. He says, Russ, you've been great.
Appreciate it, Billy.
I agree.
Yeah.
Mish, Russ isn't a homer, which I appreciate. I think you have been absolutely more than fair. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Russ, why don't you go ahead and tell us what is going on with the Boiler Express? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, if you know what's going on with Weather Express right now, then please tell me, because we're definitely we're in summer mode. You haven't seen a lot of it lately. I think there's been more effort put into our college huddle dynasty on the Xbox right now, because it's definitely off season. We're in the slump, and then the Pacers kind of happening with Tuesday night. Tuesday nights is usually when we post or we do a live podcast, and Pacers playing Tuesday nights has also kind of thrown a wrench in that. But you'll see more of us coming up as the season approaches. Just search Boiler Express on YouTube, Twitter. I think we even have an Instagram, Facebook, everywhere we're out there, Spotify even. So just check us out there and hear hopefully some more solid Purdue takes.
Yep. Well, and it'll be fun for you to give more of those takes when you actually know who more of the roster is and the depth chart is, which, someone had mentioned, you mentioned our lads, and I think Billy actually mentioned our lads being slow to update. And I can't wait for Phil Steele's mag to come out, because I feel like that has been the most helpful, especially in the NIL era and the transfer portal era. I'm like, he has, I think, every roster updated to the T by the time August rolls around. And I'm like, I don't know what I would do without this and without his research. So it's very helpful. But I figure where I was going to go. Russ, thank you for being here. Thanks for coming on. And I know, talking Purdue has not always been the most fun the past 12 months, but I appreciate you coming on and answering questions honestly.
Yeah. Anytime JR is suspended, I'm happy to be here.
Yes, he's on suspension. We're going to go with that. And he's suspended on Tuesday too, which, by the way, if you are excited, and one of the things I love about doing this is, like, I'm an Ohio State fan, but I want to know what's going on with all the Big Ten teams. And so, Russ, it was great having you on tonight. We're going to have Kevin and possibly Zed from Bruin Source on Tuesday to talk UCLA. And again, I'm excited.
By the way, they're in LA. It's them in USC.
Oh, yeah. They're in LA? Really? College in Los Angeles.
True. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. Had no idea. That I will say I give Deshaun Foster a lot of props for eating that afterwards. He was like, he took it like a man, and I'm like, well done. I give you that. But if you want to know more about UCLA, just like we learned a lot about Purdue tonight. Boy, I'm tired. I'm sorry, Russ. But yeah, you learned a lot about Purdue tonight. Come back Tuesday and learn a lot about UCLA. Those guys are great at Bruin Source. And of course, check out Boiler Express, subscribe, make sure you leave a review, those guys do deep dives on Purdue all season long. This is Zach Guggenheim from the Big Ten Huddle, and we are ending now.